Okay, we are on 5A2, I believe, but let's go back for 1 second to 5A1, where we're going to start reading this idea from the Mishnah. It's the last line on 4B3 in the English, and on Daf Daled Amud Bet, just like 2 words. Umitaknin et kilkulei hamayim shebishut harabim. The Gemara said to us that in the Mishnah that a person is allowed to fix the wells in the public spaces on the holiday. The Gemara says, from the word mitaknim, which means that you could fix it, what do we understand? That on Chol HaMoed, a person is allowed to fix a well, okay, but not dig one in the first place. Chatita in, chafira lo. You could clean one out, you could fix it if it needs to be fixed, but you cannot dig it fresh. The Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yaakov said the name Rabbi Yochanan. Lo shanu ela she'en rabim tzrichin lahem. This idea that you can't dig it in the first place is when the public do not need it for Chol HaMoed. But if for whatever reason the public did need this well for Chol HaMoed, then the halakha would be not only are you allowed to clear out a well that's become dysfunctional or stuffed with leaves or whatever the case might be, you're even allowed to dig a new one because the people need it and it's Chol HaMoed.
The overwork concept, the extra work concept doesn't apply here?
No, this will supersede. Tzarchei Rabim will supersede the extra effort. Okay? Now, says the Gemara. The Gemara asks, is that true? That if the Rabim needs something, then you're able to do even to dig it out? We learned in the Braita. Now remember, just in this Braita, there's going to be 2 different cases. One is the case of a private person, and one is the case of a public need. The Gemara says, the Braita says, you're allowed to clear any sort of pit, whether it's a cave, a ditch, a well of a yachid, you're allowed to clear it out. You don't have to tell me even that if the public need it, that you're allowed to do so. That's obvious that you're allowed to clear out, not dig, clear out the well of a private person. How much more so the public? But you do not dig out the pits of the Rabim, of the masses, of the public. And how much more so? And you don't have to say anything about the Yachid. So clearly the Braita says, 1000% clear, that you do not dig out from scratch, build a new well, even for the Rabim. Clearly. Okay? Gemara says, no. Kishe'en, this case, lo. When did we say that you can't dig out for the Rabim a new well when they don't need it on the holiday? So whatever reason they don't need it, we're not going to dig it. Because the only reason why we're allowing you to do so is because of the need. And therefore, if you have a Rabim, a public well, which is not needed, don't do it on Chol HaMoed, which obviously you could understand that. Why would we let you do it if they don't need it? The whole point was that you could do it because they need it, okay? So the Gemara's answer is very simple. At this point, how we understanding, the Braita is going in a case where the masses, the Rabim, don't need the well. And that's why you're not allowed to dig it. What about our Mishnah? Our Mishnah said that you could fix it, seemingly that you can't dig it. The Gemara said, but if they need it, you're even allowed to dig it. So does that work now with this Braita? Perfect. So Rabbi Yaakov comes along and says, our Mishnah is going where they don't need it. But if they need it, you're even able to dig it. The Gemara brought a Braita that says that you're not allowed to dig it. What did he answer them back? It's talking about when they didn't. They didn't need it.
Don't you think that beam, the bar will be so low that they'll need it?
So let me give you an example of where that would be obvious that they... I'll give you an example where they don't need it. What happens during the holiday? The Jewish people used to leave wherever they were, and they would go up to Yerushalayim, and they would be in the Beit HaMikdash for the holidays, for the Chol HaMoed. The Jewish people would go to Jerusalem 3 times a year. Imagine now you're in Deal, New Jersey, and there's a well there. Nobody's even in town. But we have on the municipal list things we need to get done is to dig the well. That's a well of the Rabim that they're not going to need it. Nobody's here. Okay? So, says the Gemara, in that case, you'd be allowed to clear it out, but you would not be allowed to dig a new one. The Gemara says, one second. So far you think everything is rosy. The problem is the Gemara says, you have to have consistency. If you're going to make, what did we call it last week? Anyone remember? Ukimta. If you're going to say that the case of the Mishnah or the Braita is ukimta. I'm going to establish it in this case. I'm going to establish it where it's not needed. So for the sake of symmetry, because the Mishnah is talking about public and private, if you're telling me that the public case is where they don't need it, what must you say the private case is also talking about? Where you don't need it. Says the Gemara, so then if we applied the same established case with regard to the private person, that the private person does not need it. If that's the case, chatita mishari. If the individual person doesn't need it, we wouldn't even let you clean it out. Never mind dig a new one. So you answered your question on the digging by creating a scenario, a context, which would allow for chafirah to match what you're saying. But then the other side of the Mishnah doesn't work. Because if the yachid, if the individual doesn't need it done, then we wouldn't even let him clean it out on Chol HaMoed. Ve'atanya, and how can I prove this? Doesn't it say in the Braita, Borot sichinu me'arot shel yachid, the pits of a yachid, konsin mayin letocham, you could have water come into them, aval lo chotetin, but you can't clean them out. V'lo shafin etzedekehen, you can't fix the cracks. V'shel rabim, and of the public, chotetin otam, you're allowed to fix them. V'shafin etzedekehen, and you're allowed to fix the cracks in the of the possession of the rabim. Now, obviously, what's this case going in? In a case where the rabim, where you don't need it. And what does it say over here? That when it comes to a scenario where you don't need it, the rabim, you're allowed to clear out, but by extension we would understand you can't dig a new one. But it also says that in the case of the yachid, where ostensibly it's the same case where he doesn't need it, you're not allowed to do chatita. So therefore, this Braita presents for us a little bit of a problem in the symmetry that we're using. Says the Gemara, ve'elamai, one second, how would you rather me express this Braita? B'sheyachid tzarich lahem, when the individual does need it, so that matches. So therefore, chotetin, you could clear it out because the individual does need it. If that's the case, then you'd have to say the kavatega berabim, symmetric design. The masses, the public, would also need it on the holiday. B'shirabim tzricha lahem chafira mi'asir, when the public need it, we even allow you to dig. And the Braita clearly says, Yachid chatita is kosher. How much more so for Rabim, for public? Rabim chafira not kosher. How much more so for Yachid? So, but you just told me that chafira, digging, is allowed when they need it. V'hatanya, we have an explicit Braita that says this. The borot, the pits of a yachid, you bring water in. But you do not. And you can clean them out, right? But you can't fix the cracks. And you're not clear into them. You do not put lime around the outside, solidifying them. When it comes to rabim, now we're for sure talking about over here where the rabim needs it. And you see that clearly the rabim, when they need it, they're allowed to even dig. Gemara says you're right. Ela kashach kamaitas. You'd be stuck with expressing and understanding this first Braita, which has, whichever way you go, you're stuffed. Everyone understand that?
But I think it's different than Yachid. So why is it a complication? Why is it
because the problem is that the Mishnah touches all the bases. And therefore, whatever context you give it, one of the halachot is wrong. The Mishnah starts off and says, you're allowed to clear out for Yachid and for sure for Rabim. Then it says, you're allowed to dig, you're not allowed to dig for Rabim, how much more so for Yachid. So it touches Rabim and Yachid on cleaning out, and Rabim and Yachid on digging. Okay? So the Gemara says, which way do you want to go? If it's talking about when they don't need it, the first part of the Mishnah makes no sense. Or the Braita makes no sense. If it's talking about where they do need it, the second part of the Mishnah makes no sense. Because when they don't need it, even a single guy can't clean it out. If it's talking about where they do need it, even the public is allowed to dig it out, a new one. So the Braita makes no sense either way. Answers the Gemara, no. I'll create a different kind of symmetry. This is what you should answer. You're allowed to clear out the pits of a yachid when he needs it. Ve'en tzarich lomar, and you don't even need to say that you're allowed to clear out for the Rabim. You know why? De'afilu chafira mutar. You don't have to say it. You know why? Because even more than that is allowed, even digging. The second case, ve'en chofrim borot tzachot ma'am sharabim, and you can't dig for new. For the public, a case where kishe'en tzrichim, when the Rabim does not need it. Ve'en tzarich lomar shel yachid, and you don't have to tell me that you can't dig for the yachid when they don't need it. You know why? Because you're not even allowed to clear out when he doesn't need it. So we create symmetry in the first half and in the second half. Yeah, kal v'chomer, en tzarich lomar. The only way you use kal v'chomer though is when there's a biblical verse involved, right? That's when you use it. So, but the idea of the kal v'chomer is correct there. Yes. Okay, says the Gemara. Now that we understand this, Amar Ravashi says, right? Matnitan nami daika. If you are making the yuk in the reading of the Mishnah, you'll see this for sure true. The Katani osi kol tzorchei rabim. The Gemara says, right? It clearly states you could do this, and you could do this, and you could do this, and you could do whatever the Rabim needs. Well, you gave me the cases. What more you're adding by saying, and you could do whatever they need? Kol la'atu yemai. When it said you could do everything that they need, what does it mean to include? Lav la'atu hafira. Maybe it's coming to tell you that because I told you could fix it. But you could do kol tzorchei rabim, whatever they need. Indicating, remember what we said. Yeah. When are you allowed to dig it out? When they need it. You could do kol tzorchei, all the needs of the rabim. I told you could clean it out. But you could do whatever they need. Meaning, if they need you to dig it, fada. Okay? Rav Ashi says you could see it in the Mishnah. Answers the Gemara. No. It just told you that you could do whatever they need. You know what it's coming to include? It's coming to include other cases. The Braita says, you're able to go out on the road and clear away all the thorns. You're able to clear out also and to fix the potholes and the guardrails of the streets, of the thoroughfares. Moed Kattan, and to measure the mikveh to make sure that it's exactly 40 sa'ah. And any mikveh that does not have 40 sa'ah, we could figure out how to get rainwater into it by making sure that we dig a space or whatever from one to the other. How do we know that if the municipal workers, the workers of the Beit Din, do not go out and do all these things to fix, that if something happens, how do I know that anything that happens, any mistake that happens, is held on their shoulders and on their responsibility, if they're done as if they done it themselves? Talmud Lomar, the pasuk says, the blood of that person will be on you. And we explained what's the blood over here that we're talking about. We explained the Rashi, either that someone is on an impassable road and they get into an accident on the road, or and somebody dies, or someone gets very injured, or if, as an example, the road, because it's not in its proper way, the bandits that are on the road that come to attack a caravan, person who's trying to get away, he gets killed because he can't escape, because the escape routes are not paved. So we asked, what does a mikveh have to do with it? The answer is mikveh. The punishment for mikveh is karet. So if a person is not able to go to the mikveh, or they went to a mikveh which they thought was kosher, but really had 39 sa'ah, and they get punished for it, whose punishment is that on? That's on you. Okay? Says the Gemara.
It's not on the public, on the people they're responsible to do it?
No, the punishment that they get is on you. On the municipal workers that didn't fix it.
On them.
Exactly.
Yes, on them.
Yeah. Now, by the way, just to be clear, if I thought the mikveh was 40 sa'ah, and I went to dunk in the mikveh, and now I was nida, and relations with nida. Yeah, but that's complete honest.
Yeah, you didn't know.
Had no idea. Right. There's no way that the person gets punished for that.
These days, we understand people
but they will get the punishment.
Right.
Why? Because although you didn't know, you created a scenario where there's a terrible punishment for that. Who's going to pay for that punishment? Because they didn't even know. Says the Gemara further. Says the Gemara, one second. You're telling me that kol tzorchei rabim means all of these? But we have a braita. The braita says all those things. So what I need to have a kol for it. And the Gemara says, not only is it said in the braita, but even in the Mishnah. What did you just tell me? You just taught me about the roads. And our Mishnah says, "Metaknin el haderachim v'terachovot." You fix the roads and the thoroughfares. Ve'eta mikvaot and the mikvaot. So what did you just add in this Braita that's not already in our Mishnah? And if it's in our Mishnah, it can't be that Kol Tzorchei Rabim is coming to include these things because it says them explicitly in our Mishnah. Turn back to the very first page, Bet Amud Aleph, and you'll see right at the end of the Mishnah, right after the case of the wells, what does it say? Metaknin et haderachim v'terachovot, fix the roads. Ve'eta mikvaot hamayim, and then fix the mikvaot hamayim. So that can't be what it means when it says do all the needs of the public, because you expressed it clearly. So it must be, what is it coming to tell you? It must be coming to tell you this, the dig. Gemara says, doesn't it come to express that I told you could fix the wells? But if they need more, you're even able to dig the wells. Shema Mina, it's a good proof from the Mishnah that this is true. He's trying to prove the point from within the words of the Mishnah itself. Okay. Says the Gemara, you can mark the graves. Amar Reb Shimon ben Pazi. Reb Shimon ben Pazi says, Remez l'tzion kivarot. I would not have gone back had I remembered that we started this piece already. I remembered that we needed to go back in order to go further, to continue on. But this was what we need to go back to. So the last 10 minutes was just good chazara. Says the Gemara, you mark the graves. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Pazi. Shimon ben Pazi says, Remez l'tzion kivarot min haTorah minayin. Where do we find in the Torah this idea that that the graves need to be marked? Who said? Maybe it's a... Gemara answers, Talmud Omar. What? Yes, well that's Yechezkel. Says the Gemara, you see the bones of a man and put a marker next to it. Where was it talking about? It was talking about during the war of Gog and Magog, where there'll be dead people everywhere, okay? So what's going to happen? The first pass of people to pass by are going to identify where the bodies are. They're going to mark them. When the second group of people comes by to bury them, they'll be able to find where the bodies were to be able to bury them, and people won't get, so to speak, left without the kavod of a burial, okay? So the pasuk says that when you see a body, you got to mark where the body is, okay? The Gemara says, hold on. Ravina said, Ravashi, 1 second. That's only in Yechezkel. Yechezkel is a prophet that's towards the end of the 24 books. What did the Jewish people do before that point where the pasuk was said to Yechezkel? If the only biblical source for this, I don't know if it's biblical, it's not biblical. If the only scriptural source is here in Yechezkel, what did they do beforehand that nobody told it to them? Because it's only Yechezkel. Gemara says, Rav Ashi says, and according to you, Hadam Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda said, Davar ze mitorat Moshe Rabbeinu lamanu. This idea, what is it talking about? It's talking about a Kohen that did not get a Brit Milah. He's not allowed to go on the Temple Mount. Where do we find it from? The pasuk says, V'devrei Yechezkel levuzi lamanu. We learned it from Yechezkel as well. Kol ben nechar arel lev ve'arel basar lo yavo el mikdashi. Any stranger. Ben nechar means son of a stranger, of a foreigner, okay? Arel lev, who has a uncircumcised heart, ve'arel basar, or an uncircumcised flesh, lo yavo mikdash, you should not come into my temple. So what do you see from there? Yechezkel is expressing that a kohen that did not get a brit milah is not allowed to go to the Beit HaMikdash. Says the Gemara, according to you, that you just asked me this question, what did we do before the pasuk in Yechezkel? There were Jews for 2,000 years, 1,500 years before that. The Gemara says, who told them what to do before Yechezkel came along? Rather, it was a law that was handed down in the oral Torah from teacher to student from Mount Sinai. Yechezkel came along. He just put a scriptural pasuk describing the thing that they all knew. Okay? So too over here, Yechezkel, in saying that when there's a body out, you got to mark it, was just describing something that was taught. Yechezkel came along and turned it into a pasuk in his sefer, in his book, Yechezkel and Ezekiel. Rabbi Abahu says, let me find you another place. The pasuk says, V'tameh, tameh yikra. What happens? We said this before. When a Mesorah gets tzarat on his arm, he goes to the Kohen analyzes it. Once the Kohen says, tzarat. You're tameh. What does the guy do? The guy needs to sequester himself. He needs to be locked up. He goes outside of the camp, right, etc., until the Kohen says that you've recovered from it. 583, first column. Ravahu says, the tameh says, the Metzorah says, tameh yikra. When he's walking in the streets, what does he say to everybody? He says, tameh, tameh. He needs to say out loud, I'm tameh to people, to warn them from coming close to him. Tum'ah korah lo ve'omeret lo pirosh. What does that mean? The tum'ah tells the people, stay away from me. So too, Rabbi Uzel, this grandson of Rabbi Uzel Rabbah, the great Rabbi Uzel said, Tum'ah korah lo ve'omeret lo pirosh. The tum'ah calls out to him and tells him, stay away. Now let's look what this means in Rashi. What does it mean the tum'ah calls out to him? Says Rashi, hold on. You see that? Tum'ah, about 3/4 of the way down in Rashi. Tum'ah kor'ah lo perush. What does it mean? The tum'ah calls out to him. Klomar, what it means to say, osim simanim ala tum'ah, we make signs that immediately identify the tum'ah, kidei shehem margishu poresh. So when a person is a Metzorah and he's tameh, and we don't want people to become tameh by getting in touch with him, what do? We create something that will save people from interaction with tum'ah. How do we do that? By having him walk around, saying tum'ah, tum'ah. If I have a dead body that's going to make people tameh, also I need to have something that will have the impurity call out to those around to say, don't come near. What is that? A marker. Excellent. Says the Gemara, 1 second. You just gave me this answer, that another proof for this halakha. Are you telling me that that's what that's coming to express, coming to teach us? Hahu this pasuk of tum'ah, tameh tameh yikra, we needed lekidetanya for what we learned in the Braita. Tameh tameh yikra, tameh tameh, he says, tzarich lohodia tzaro l'rabim. He needs to tell everybody of his problem. Why? Rabim mevakshim alav rachamim. And everybody, when they hear, why does he have to say tameh tameh? So everyone will feel bad for the guy. And what happens when they feel bad for him? They'll pray for him. So the reason why we're saying tameh tameh yikra is for the purpose of people to pray for him. It's not to warn them away, like you're saying, which would then teach me that we need a warning away for a dead body too, i.e. a marking, a grave, a stone, a sign, whatever the case might be. We need it for that. The Gemara answers, Imken, if that's all the pasuk was coming to tell us, lichtov v'tameh yikra, let it just say once, tameh he should call. My v'tameh tameh, why does it say twice, tameh tameh he should say? Shmat mina tarti. We learn out two different things from the two different words, tameh tameh yikra. One tameh tells us, please have mercy on me. Please pray to God that I should get better, that I should that the sarat should go away. One tameh says, but listen, as much empathy and sympathy as you have, Dachila, don't give me a hug. We don't need more people to be tameh because of this. So one tameh is to encourage prayer. One tameh is to keep people away, and therefore we still have a proof from here that tum'ah needs a marker in order to be able to keep people away. Now, just to be clear, why do we need another proof, Rabbi Avahu? The answer is because the first proof came from Yechezkel. So yes, it's true that Yechezkel, we say that he had a Mesorah handed down, and he was just giving it a pasuk. But Rabbi Avahu's pasuk is from the Torah. Okay? So therefore, the Gemara tried to find biblical proofs and not just scriptural proofs. The Gemara continues. Amar Abaye says, no, mihacha. You know where we learn it from? From here. You're not allowed to put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. Now, let's just be clear. What does this mean? The pasuk tells us, thou shalt not place a stumbling block before a blind person. What do you think the Isur is? Do not place a brick in front of a blind guy. That's what you think it is. And the truth is, of course it is.
We have many other examples.
Excellent. Chachamim explain it doesn't only mean a physical brick and a physical blind person. It means a guy's getting into business with somebody. And you know the guy is a crook. And he stole money from you, he stole money from everybody. Guy comes up to you and he says, look, I'm doing this deal with this guy. Everything's kosher? You know, Bet Yosef, can I go there? Glat, kosher, but parv. And you say, I don't want to say Lashon Hara. So you say, yo, yeah, lovely guy. Best guy ever.
No, but if you know for a fact.
You know for a fact. Personal, first-hand information.
You have to warn him.
Have to warn him. Where do we learn that from? This pasuk. You shall not place a stumbling block in front of a blind person. This man is a stumbling block. This guy, with regards to this situation, is blind. Someone comes and says, thinking about going out with this girl, I want to marry her. You know that she's Majnun. Not a opinion, not my style. Legit. The girl's crazy. This is what she did. I remember, I was there, I witnessed. She's out of her mind. If you know that, and the person asks you, you don't have a job to run around telling everybody everything. But someone comes and asks you the question, you can't hold that information back from him. So long as you know it's true, and not just that it's true firsthand, but that it's currently true. Okay? So, what's fascinating is that of all the commentators, Rambam actually adds that not only do we learn the allegory from this Mishnah, from this Pasuk, that you can't, if you have information, you have to tell the person. Or, as an example, I know you've got a thing for steak. I've got the sickest non-kosher steak. I'm like, here, fadda. Lifnei iver. That's halakha. You're putting a stumbling block in front of a blind man. The guy can't help himself. He's going to have the filet mignon post haste. You did that. You caused that. That's lifnei iver also.
So if there was a grave there and it's now unmarked, people who are getting ready to have the Korban Pesach or whatever are suddenly going to stumble by becoming tameh, and so it's important that it be marked for people in the future not to stumble.
That's what the Gemara is saying. So Abaye is saying, what's the biblical source for marking a grave? This.
Same thing.
That a blind guy who don't know what he's walking on is going to be tameh. He's now going to go to the Beit HaMikdash, eat the korban b'tumah. Terrible.
You know there's a grave there.
You got to mark it. Exactly. Okay. Lifnei iver.
You're a witness. You're a thing.
Yeah, you're a witness. You know it's there. You got to mark it. Yeah, that's what's amazing about Rambam is
5,000 years later, you could be liable for not having marked the grave when somebody stumbles across that grave.
everything that happens after that point, your problem. Says the what's it called? Says the Rambam, which is the most interesting thing. Rambam says not only do we learn from this case, all those other cases, the pasuk never meant an actual brick and an actual blind man. So paradoxically, Rambam holds that if you take an actual brick and you put it in front of an actual blind man, you might be a terrible person, but you've not broken this commandment, which is wild. All the other Rishonim disagree with Rambam. Okay, let's just continue. Says the Gemara, Rav Papa says, Damar, solu panu derech. The pasuk says, solu, which means you have to smooth the road. Solu means to pave, to make something straight. That's what the Navi says. When the time of Mashiach, the roads to the Beit HaMikdash will all become straight. Even the places that have peaks and valleys, even the topography, which is up and down, it's all going to be made straight, paved. Okay, solu, pave it. Says the pasuk, panu derech, clear the road. Okay, so you see in the pasuk that there's an obligation to clear the road, and the understanding of Rav Papa is that since the Torah told you that the road needs to be a road easily traveled, where people don't have to worry what's there, what's not there, both in terms of physical stumbling blocks, but also in terms of spiritual or purity stumbling blocks. So therefore, says Rav Papa, we learn from that pasuk that is mentioned with regards to going to the Beit HaMikdash. Let's look at the pasuk in its entirety. It's in the little side column over there, right smack in the middle, number Vav. Ve'amar solu solu panu derech harimu michshol miderech ami. The end of the pasuk is even more clear. Harimu michshol, take away. Michshol means something that a person is going to stumble on. Miderech ami, from the road of my people. So Rav Papa says that's where we learn this from. Now, this pasuk of solu solu is not in the Torah. This pasuk is in Yeshaya. It's also in the Navi. So it wouldn't be biblical. It would be scriptural, which would be similar to the one in Yechezkel. Rav Chanina says, "Miderech ami harim mechshol miderech ami." He learns it from the end of the pasuk. Okay, the first rabbi learned it from solu solu panu derech, clear the road. The second one says harim mechshol, but really, it could have been from either one of those. Rav Yoshua, Bered Rav Idi, Rav Yoshua, the son of Idi says, "V'odata lahem et haderech." And you shall let them know the road upon which they shall travel. What does it mean? You should let them know on the road. Is that what he is? MapQuest, right? Is that what the pasuk is telling you? It's telling you should tell them directions, navigate around traffic. No, it's explaining that you should tell the people which way they're allowed to go because of Tumah. Mazutra says, and how do you do that? By marking the grave. You have to separate, you have to pull them away from their Tumah. Now that's a pasuk in the Torah. The Torah says, V'hizartem otam, it's in Shemot, you see it, number 7. V'hizarta or etem et hachukim, and you shall teach them and warn them the chukim, the laws, et hatorot, and the Torah. You'll teach them the road to travel on. The next pasuk in Vayikra says, and you will warn them away from their tumah. How do you warn someone away from their tumah, separate them from the tumah? By making sure that there's no tumah in their life. Not just by teaching them the laws of tumah, but by also physically removing the instances of tumah that would come in their path. Rav Ashi says, Ushmartem et mishmarti. You shall protect. Shmirah means to protect. Ushmartem et mishmarti. You should protect my mishmar. What does it mean? Ushmartem et mishmarti. You should protect that which I'm asking you to guard. Asu mishmeret le mishmarti. Put extra fences around that which I wanted you to be careful from. So I asked you not to become tameh. How do you make a fence for my fence? Not only are you not allowed to become tameh, you have to make sure that it's clear to the person before he even gets to the tumah not to come close to that place. How do you do that? By marking the grave. Ravina says, Visham derech arenu v'yesha Elohim. And a person who sets the road, right? Visham derech, a person who sets the road, arenu, that person will see v'yesha Elohim, will see Hashem's protection and His Yeshua. So what does Visham derech mean? Who's a person who places the road? Is that the guy who drives the Tarzan Boni? That's what it's talking about? The guy who picks up the cones as they're paving the road? Who's the Sam Derech? The one who sets the road. Answers the Gemara, this is an allusion to the person who creates and places a road of Tahara to the Beit HaMikdash. Okay. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Yoshua ben Levi says, Kol asam orchotav. What does this mean? V'sam derech, that a person who sets the road, he will see the salvation of Hashem. Kol asam orchotav, when a person sets his ways, zochev v'ro'eh b'yishuato shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He sees the Yeshua of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, don't read it sam, but rather sham. What does sham mean? A shuma. Shuma means to evaluate, to get an appraisal on a building is a shuma. Okay? So let's say you want to know how much is this property worth. So it's estimated that property that's a shuma. Says the Gemara, Hasam derech, when a person sets the road, says Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, you want to know who gets the salvation of God from that pasuk? Someone who's sham derech, that whenever he goes on his way, he always appraises, he evaluates his way. How am I acting? What am I going to say to this person? What kind of deal do I want to offer? How am I going to behave in the Bet Knesset?
Well thought out, well planned.
Correct. Planned, evaluated, but constructed.
Yeah.
Now, there's one thing I just want to add to this. One adjective that I think is very important in the word appraisal. Okay? It's not only a plan, how will I? Sham also means the shuma, the value. Okay, the evaluation. Part of the way that a person sets their road in life is by ascribing and assigning values to different things.
It's like prioritizing.
Yes, prioritizing, that's it now. So when you evaluate your road, in other words, this is how much the business is worth, 8 points. How much is family? Family, 10 points. How much is Torah? Where does it fall on my list of priorities? Okay? So in all of these things, I give a value to the road. And a person who lives their life in that manner will live it correctly, and they'll be zochet to see the salvation of Hashem. So he gets it from the Sam Derech, which can also be read the Sham Derech, a person who evaluates their way. I just came up with a beautiful chidush. The Gemara says, we quoted this morning in the class, that after the Jewish people received the Torah on Mount Sinai, what did God do? He held the mountain over them and he said, either you accept this or not. After. If you do not accept it, Sham tehekvuratchem, there will be your burial. According to what we're learning today, we have such a deep understanding of Gemara. What do we just say? Don't read it v'sam derech. Read it v'sham derech. That God was telling Jewish people, Sham tehekvuratchem. If when there's a threat hanging over your head, you're not willing to do the Torah and mitzvot, you know what's going to bury you? Your evaluation. Sham tehekvuratchem. Doesn't just mean there will be your burial here at the foot under this mountain. Sham tehekvuratchem means that if you can't say yes under duress, right? Then you don't understand the value of Torah. Sham tehekvuratchem, what's going to bury you is that you are undervaluing the Torah. What a beautiful thing it is when the Gemara class is connecting into the morning class. I got to go back down and record little DVD extras.
How's this last related incident a related incident? Because this one speaks directly to me. When you can interrupt the rabbi with your dumb questions and when you shouldn't on Shabbat.
You know something, I'll tell you this. I learned a little bit of a different approach. And my approach has always been with all my students of whatever age or background, the only stupid question is the one you haven't asked.
Yeah.
So a person, there's no question that's dumb because the question means I want to understand. Now, let me qualify that. Sometimes people are not asking questions, they're making statements in the form of a question. They want to say something in the class, they want to show people what I know, so they ask a question, but really, they're not asking a question, they're making a statement. In that scenario, I tell them, look, you're in a class right now, you're not playing Jeopardy. Don't make statements in the form of a question.
Okay,
You like that? You didn't know where that was going until right at the end, I hooked you in. Yeah.
But my question is, relative to what we just talked about, Vasham, Vasam,
Yeah.
that, the next line says a related incident is cited, which talks about when it is appropriate.
Oh, we didn't even get there. You're asking a question about what we didn't get to yet. But let me answer you with the Gemara that we did already learn. When it comes from the fact that a person values the Torah so much that they need to know the answer to this. Again, not for my ego, not to show off what I know. Look, I asked such a clever question. But look, I need to understand, what does this mean? How does this work? That's a person who's valuing the Torah, and that question should be asked. Now, the Gemara says, Rabbi Yana had a certain student. Every single day, he would ask him questions. B'Shabbata, Diregila, lo have when he would learn with them every day, he would ask him questions. On Shabbat, right, or the holiday, Or Shabbata dirigila, right? The Shabbat of the holiday. Two ways of seeing that. Lo avim akshele. He would not ask him. Why? Because there will be a lot of people. And once there was a lot of people, the rabbi, what would happen if the rabbi didn't have an answer to the question?
Would be embarrassed.
Be embarrassed for everybody. So he always refrained from asking the rabbi a question on his Shabbat of the holiday. Now, let's just revisit that. Why does it say Shabbat of the holiday? That discourse, that class was the best attendance. Because the people were coming not only for Shabbat, they were coming for Shabbat and the holiday. So on those peak attendance times, this student would not ask his rabbi questions because he was afraid what might happen if his rabbi might not have the answer. Get embarrassed. Kare aleha, Rabbi Yanai said about him, V'sam derech erenu v'yesh Elohim. A person who, as we said, sets the way. And how does he set his way? By appraising the way, by thinking to himself, what road should I travel? In this scenario, what's the right thing to do here? What's the right thing to do there? There, the halakha is, that person will see Yeshua. So Rabbi Yanai deeply appreciated that his student was being considerate in asking him questions in front of a lot of people. Okay? Let me just, on this related topic, where we basically quoted the same pasuk and gave another expression of it, I just want to say one last piece on this element of asking questions. The halacha is that a person is never supposed to ask shelo ke'inyan. So in other words, in a class, a student is supposed to ask questions that are on the topic. They're never supposed to ask questions that are not on the topic. And there are two reasons for this nekudah. One reason is because maybe we just saw, maybe the rabbi is focused and he's prepared and he has his thoughts, worked out for this topic. You're now asking him about some other masechet. His mind is not there, so maybe he'll give you the wrong answer, or maybe he'll be embarrassed, or maybe he won't know. But the second answer, I think, is really even more powerful. Is that a person needs to be disciplined in thought. And although in this moment, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. What does that mean? Or what's the halakha? Or how would we hold with regards to this other thing or whatever? And it's very tempting. You know why? Because all of a sudden you come across this crazy halakha in Shemitah. And that's what the Gemara always does. Right? What about this on Yom Tov, on Shabbat, Yom Kippur, in a business deal? So you're thinking, oh, well, that's such an interesting thing. What about that? What about that? The problem is, forget everybody else, forget the rabbi. If you're letting your brain wander down that path further than the Gemara wants you to go, where are you now? You're not here. You're there. You're not focused on what we're trying to do here. It causes a person to lose clarity and to lose their train of thought here. So one of the elements of Sam Derech versus Sham Derech is a disciplined mind that's capable of saying and seeing. That's not part of this. Wait, let's stay here. Where are we? How many times do I say that? Guys, let's stay here. That's off topic. We can't deal with that now. The Gemara does that.
Talking about the road, and he went to
all the time the Gemara does that.
Right,
but
so it's showing you to explore.
The Gemara is telling you up until here. So in other words, the Gemara says, look, at this Braita it says this, 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 and this. And the end of the Braita says this, and that's the piece we need. All of a sudden, the guy is asking, well, the first opinion, and what is the...
Different conversation.
You're going to forget everybody else for a minute. Forget the rabbi. You're going to lose the point of the Gemara. The Gemara only came to this place to do one thing. Okay? And the minute you remove your focus from the line of the Gemara, you're actually going to lose clarity here. So let's just focus in, zone in. What did the Gemara need from that Mishnah? It had to quote the Mishnah to ask you the question, but this is the point that's relevant, and this is the question. So I'm okay having a rudimentary knowledge of that external point you just brought in. I'm okay with it, because I know that having a deeper knowledge over there is going to come at the expense of me understanding what I'm actually learning. Okay? We used to do this to my rabbi all the time. He would come right before the Pesach, we would say, could you teach us this laws about this and this? We're in the middle of learning something else. So he would say, no, we're learning Gemara. What do you mean? We're done doing this now. learning this. So we said to the rabbi, but the Halav Pesach's right here. What are we going to do on Pesach? My rabbi smiled and he said, what'd you do last year? Like last year you didn't know it. This year you didn't know it. Okay. When you get to it, you learn it, right? Right now we're not learning that. We're learning this. But that's discipline in thought. And you should just know, in today's world, that is one of the most valuable things that a person can have in their arsenal is a focused mind. People are all over the place. So they lose track. They don't have good ideas. They can't really see all the angles of something. You know why? Because in the process of analysis of a business deal, of all the angles of the deal, they're so ADHD or ADHD traits from the way we train ourselves with our phones that they can't follow something from the beginning until it's logical. And a lot of times people will call me for an issue, and as I'm talking them through the issue, they're already going. I was like, just finish what you're saying. Finish your thing. I'm only interrupting you to tell you not to interrupt yourself.
But doesn't it say, you said that this Gemara assumes you know a lot of things sometimes that you don't know?
Correct.
So it makes you kind of wonder, because you say, what's this talking about? What's that talking about? Does that apply to that?
So
it forces that thought process.
Absolutely. And that's why we need to have a rudimentary knowledge of what's going on over there. Like as an example, imagine, sometimes, I'll just give you an example of this. Before we started the Masechet, we had an intro. Without that intro, we would have had no clue what's going on. Okay? So why did I give that intro? Because the intro was necessary. I would not have wasted my time if we could have just started the Gemara. And we'll just figure it out as we go. However much you need to know, when they say you're on a need-to-know basis and you don't need to know? And when a person is studying anything, you're on a need-to-know basis. What do I need to know in this scenario in order to be able to... That's how a person achieves mastery. Otherwise, what happens? They become a jack of all trades and a master of none. Baruch Hanai Le'olam. Amen.